France, 1943. The world was deep in war, and behind the barbed wire and the broken streets of occupied Europe, a silent war was being fought. One without uniforms, medals, or rules. It was the War of Spies. While British bombers roared overhead and Allied troops planned their return to Europe, a small group of ordinary women were stepping into a fight far more personal. A fight fought with forged papers, coded messages, and a single mistake away from death. Among them was Violette Szabo, just 22 years old. She wasn't a soldier. She was a mother. Young, brave, and recently widowed after her husband died in North Africa. When the Special Operations Executive, the SOE, came calling, she didn't hesitate. They told her she would be trained to fight behind enemy lines. She said yes. Her mission: parachute into Nazi-occupied France, link up with the resistance, and disrupt German supply lines before D-Day. It sounded simple in training, but in France, nothing was simple. Every glance, every wrong word could mean capture. Far away, another woman was also preparing to disappear into the shadows, Noor Inayat Khan. A gentle soul, a writer, a musician, and the daughter of an Indian Sufi mystic. She hated violence, yet chose the most dangerous role of all, a wireless operator in occupied Paris. The life expectancy for SOE radio operators was just 6 weeks. But Noor stayed for months, alone, hunted, always moving. Her code name was Madeleine. Her signal, the whisper of freedom sent from the heart of a conquered city. Each of these women had a reason for going: revenge, duty, or faith. But none of them expected to come back. As the Allies planned the liberation of Europe, these women were already behind enemy lines, risking everything so that others could one day walk free. And soon, the Gestapo would come for them. The spring of 1944 brought with it the heavy air of anticipation. Allied forces were preparing for the invasion of Europe, but before soldiers could land on the beaches of Normandy, the groundwork had to be laid deep within occupied France. The bridges had to fall. The trains had to stop. The Germans had to be misled. And that was the job of the SOE, the Baker Street Irregulars, as Churchill called them, his secret army of spies and saboteurs. For Violette Szabo, her first mission began with the dark whine of an RAF Lysander aircraft flying low over the French countryside. The pilot cut the engine, dropped to treetop height, and in the dead of night, she jumped. Her parachute opened silently above the fields of Limoges. When she landed, she buried her chute, changed her clothes, and became Louise. The British agent was gone. Only a young French woman remained. Her orders were simple but deadly. Reconnect with a shattered resistance network, assess German troop movements, and organize sabotage operations ahead of D-Day. But nothing in France was simple anymore. The Gestapo had eyes everywhere. One careless move, one whispered name, and the whole network could vanish overnight. Violette moved through villages on a bicycle, carrying coded messages in the handlebars, hiding weapons in loaves of bread. She met with resistance leaders in barns and cellars, planning ambushes and cutting communication lines. She spoke perfect French, smiled when questioned, and never let her fear show. She knew the risks. Every night she whispered goodnight to her daughter in her mind, unsure if she'd ever see her again. Meanwhile, Noor Inayat Khan was living a life of constant motion in Paris. After parachuting in, she took over as the last remaining wireless operator when the rest of her network had been captured or killed. Every day, she transmitted intelligence to London using her portable radio hidden inside a suitcase. She changed locations constantly. one night in an attic, the next in a basement, because the Gestapo's radio detection vans were sweeping the streets. Each message she sent carried the risk of death. Each click of her transmitter could betray her position. Yet she stayed, refusing evacuation. Her calm determination stunned even her superiors in London. She believed her duty wasn't finished, that her captured comrades needed her. The resistance admired her bravery. The Gestapo feared her persistence. But in Paris, trust was a fragile thing. German informants lurked in every corner, and betrayal was a matter of time. By June, the danger grew unbearable. The Gestapo had broken several networks, and agents began disappearing one after another. When Violette prepared for her second mission, she knew the net was tightening. Still, she volunteered to go back. Her second drop into France was her most dangerous yet, a desperate attempt to rebuild what was lost. But fate was waiting. In July 1944, while traveling near Limoges, her convoy was ambushed by an SS patrol. Trapped, outnumbered, she grabbed a Sten gun and fought back. Witnesses said she covered the retreat of her comrades, firing until the gun jammed. She was captured after exhausting her ammunition, beaten, interrogated, and sent to Ravensbrück concentration camp. Noor, too, was eventually betrayed, likely by a double agent inside her own network. The Gestapo captured her after a violent struggle. Even under torture, she refused to reveal a single name. They called her highly dangerous, a prisoner who never broke. Both women had entered France with courage, beyond comprehension. Both were now in German hands, tortured, starved, but silent. They had risked everything for a future they would never see. But even behind prison walls, their fight was not over. By mid-1944, the walls were closing in. The Gestapo had dismantled much of the SOE's French networks, and one by one, the brave men and women who worked in the shadows were being hunted down. Violette Szabo and Noor Inayat Khan were among the last still resisting. Two names that would soon become symbols of loyalty and sacrifice. After her capture near Limoges, Violette was taken to Fresnes prison near Paris. There, she was beaten, interrogated, and starved. The Germans wanted names. They wanted to break the resistance completely. But Violette refused to talk. Every answer she gave was a lie designed to protect others. Witnesses later said her spirit never wavered. She faced her captors with defiance, even mocking them in flawless French. When Allied bombers flew overhead, she would smile through the cell bars and whisper, "They're coming." Her torture went on for weeks. Then she was transferred to Ravensbrück, the infamous concentration camp for women in Germany. There, the cruelty reached another level. Endless labor, starvation, and public beatings meant to destroy the soul. Yet even there, Violette refused to be broken. She encouraged others, shared scraps of food, and reminded fellow prisoners that the Allies were close. Meanwhile, Noor's ordeal was unfolding in the same grim pattern. After her arrest in Paris, she was labeled a dangerous prisoner and sent to Pforzheim prison in Germany. She was kept in solitary confinement for nearly 10 months, chained hand and foot, beaten repeatedly. But she never revealed a single piece of information. The Germans were stunned. She had no weapon, no backup, no escape. Yet she fought them with silence. When interrogators demanded her cooperation, she replied simply, "I will say nothing." In September 1944, she was transferred to Ravensbrück, the same camp where Violette was held. The two women never met, but their courage followed the same path. Both refused to betray their comrades. Both inspired others to endure the impossible. By late October, as the war turned against Germany, the Nazis began executing prisoners they saw as special cases, spies, agents, and resistors who knew too much. Violette, Noor, and two other SOE women, Denise Bloch and Lilian Rolfe, were chosen. On the morning of February 5, 1945, Violette was led into the execution yard. Witnesses recalled her standing tall, refusing to beg, refusing to look away. She was shot in the back of the head. Noor followed months later. Before she was killed, she shouted one final word: Liberté, freedom. Both women died within months of liberation. The war was almost over, but their mission had been completed long before. They had proven that courage doesn't need a uniform. Their names were recorded quietly in secret British archives for years. No medals, no recognition. Not yet. The world moved on from war, forgetting the spies who never came back. But their silence had spoken louder than any victory speech. When the guns of Europe finally fell silent in May 1945, the world began to take stock of what had been lost, and who had made the victory possible. For the families of Violette Szabo, Noor Inayat Khan, and the other agents of the SOE, there was only silence. They waited for letters that never came, for names that never appeared on survivor lists. For months, no one knew what had happened to them. In London, the Special Operations Executive quietly began compiling lists of missing agents. Each report came with uncertainty: captured, presumed dead, or simply no contact. These women had gone into the heart of enemy territory under false names. Many of them were erased by war before they could ever be found. Then, as Allied forces liberated the concentration camps, the truth started to emerge. Survivors from Ravensbrück spoke of two young British women, one French-speaking, full of fire and defiance, another calm, spiritual, and unbreakable. Their courage in the face of certain death left an impression on everyone who saw them. The names surfaced again and again: Violette Szabo, Noor Inayat Khan, Denise Bloch, Lilian Rolfe. Back in Britain, their families finally received the dreaded confirmation: their loved ones had not survived. But what followed was something even more powerful. The British government investigated every account from surviving prisoners, cross-checking German execution records and intelligence logs. What they found was extraordinary. These women had achieved more in months of undercover work than many entire units had done in years. Their sabotage and communications had helped cripple German supply routes before the D-Day invasion. Their bravery had inspired the French resistance at its most dangerous moment. For their service, Violette Szabo was awarded the George Cross, Britain's highest award for civilian bravery, the second woman ever to receive it. She also received the Croix de Guerre from France, honoring her courage on French soil. Noor Inayat Khan was posthumously awarded the George Cross as well. Her father's Indian heritage and her own gentle nature made her story one of the most remarkable of the war. A woman of peace who became a symbol of resistance. In France, she was recognized with the Croix de Guerre, and her name was carved into memorials honoring those who had fought for freedom. The recognition took years, and for a time, their stories remained in classified files. The SOE had been disbanded, its operations too secret to discuss openly. It wasn't until decades later, when historians began uncovering declassified documents, that the full picture came to light. The scale of their missions, the cruelty they endured, and the courage they showed to the very end. In the post-war years, memorials began to appear, plaques in London, statues in Paris, and their names inscribed in the SOE Memorial at Valence, France. Their legacy crossed borders, reminding the world that freedom had been bought not just by armies, but by individuals who faced death, armed with nothing but courage and conviction. Still, their stories remained lesser known compared to the grand battles and generals of World War II. Theirs was a quieter kind of heroism, one built on silence, endurance, and sacrifice. It took nearly half a century for the public to truly understand what they had done. When films, books, and documentaries finally brought their missions to light, people were stunned that such bravery had gone almost unnoticed for so long. And yet, those who knew them, the agents who survived, the resistance fighters they aided, never forgot. To them, these women were not just heroes. They were legends who proved that the fight for freedom could come from anyone, anywhere, at any cost. Time has passed, but the echoes of their courage still reach across the years. Violette Szabo, Noor Inayat Khan, Denise Bloch, Lilian Rolfe. 4 names that once lived only in secret reports now stand among the most remarkable heroes of the Second World War. They weren't warriors born into battle. They were ordinary women who chose to do something extraordinary, who left their homes, their families, and their futures behind to fight a war most never even knew they were part of. Their courage reshaped how the world viewed women in war. Before them, the idea of women fighting behind enemy lines was almost unthinkable. But their work proved that bravery has no uniform, no gender, no boundaries. Each of them carried a radio instead of a rifle, a coded message instead of a bullet. Yet their impact was as powerful as any army. Today, statues and memorials stand in their honor. Violette's statue on the South Bank of London, Noor's memorial in Gordon Square Gardens, and their names engraved in France, where they fought and fell. Their stories are taught in schools, written into books, and remembered every year by those who understand that freedom is built on sacrifice. But perhaps the most powerful part of their legacy is what they represent. Defiance in the face of tyranny, strength in the face of fear, and silence in the face of cruelty. Because sometimes saying nothing is the bravest act of all. Violette once said, "I'm not afraid." Noor believed that even in darkness, one could still serve the light. Both were right. They didn't live to see the world they helped to free. But the world we have today carries their imprint. Every act of resistance, every stand for justice, every fight for freedom owes something to the courage of people like them. So the next time you think of the great heroes of World War II, remember not just the generals and soldiers, but the quiet voices who risked everything in the shadows and never came back. They were the spies who carried freedom in their hearts and paid for it with their lives. If you were moved by their story, take a moment to honor their courage. Like this video, share it with someone who believes in courage over comfort, and subscribe to WW2 Heroes Legends, where true stories of sacrifice, bravery, and the forgotten heroes of war come to life every week. Because here, we remember the ones who never came back and the legends who never die.